listening to Real Love, Real Stories. And this, my friend, is a podcast to share love stories and also get tips on building meaningful relationships in all aspects of your life. This is your girl, Kanu. I'm the host and producer of the show, and I'm a therapist by training turned love guru. I am so thrilled that you have tuned in because without you, this wouldn't be so fun. So here is another great episode. Enjoy. This episode is brought to you by Mindful Matchmaker, a service that is matching grounded and authentic singles. If you are in British Columbia and are seriously looking for love, go to kanujacobson.com for more details. That is KANUJACOBSEN.com. Are you our next love story? Welcome to Real Love, Real Stories, Eleanor. I'm excited to chat with you. So why don't you start by giving us an introduction of who you are?
Thank you for having me, Kanu. It's actually really exciting to be in person here with you talking to you. My story basically starts as a sensitive child. I was very just in tune with my surroundings, and it gave me a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of issues with just feeling other people's emotions and being extra sensitive. And as I grew up, I had a lot of problems with relationships because I wasn't really given a model for a healthy relationship in my life. And so if you add together the anxiety and the issues with choosing the right person for me and getting stuck in toxic relationships over and over again, you have a disaster. So basically, I took decades to figure out, more about who I am and discover myself and my true authentic self. And as I was doing this, I was coaching women and working in the health and wellness field as a nutritionist. And I felt like something was missing. There was, other parts of the journey that I needed to discover for myself and with the women I was working with. And so over time, it became very clear that what I was going through was actually to do with being neuro-divergent, which is ADHD, autistic, dyslexic. There's a whole umbrella of different things that are labels, I guess you can call them.
Right.
But they help you to figure out, okay, this is the reason why I'm struggling. This is the reason why I have trouble connecting with people and why I always felt like something was wrong with me.
Okay.
So when I put all the pieces of this puzzle together, I was able to figure out my life, find the love of my life and meet my husband, and then realize that this is my journey to help other women who are struggling with this similar scenario, just really feeling like, why can't I find love? What's wrong with me? Why am I struggling so much? And to help them through that journey. So
yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I was excited to chat with you and bring you on, because it was, I don't think a lot of people know what neurodivergent is.
Yeah.
So I looked it up in the dictionary, and for those that don't know what it is described as differing in mental or neurological function from what is considered typical or normal.
Yes.
So I want to dive into that a little bit later, but I want to start with your love story. Okay. So I know you touched a little bit about that. So take us back to, what was dating like during your teen years in high school, and then, how did it shift during your college years, and then bring us to where you decided to do this work. But let's just start with the high school and college years.
Oh, goodness.
Let's just have fun with it.
Yeah. So high school, so I had, this idea of myself as something was wrong with me. And outwardly, I was always hiding this issue of, having a lot of anxiety or feeling like I don't really know what to do to fit in or how to be cool or how to attract guys. And I just really had no clue. And I know as a teenager, it's pretty typical to be like that. But I feel in my situation, and the more I've learned over the years, it was just very amplified, and it was, an extreme version of that insecurity. So,
So just to give a little bit of context, when you say you felt like there was something wrong with you, can you put words into what that was like?
Yeah, so I would look at my friends who I had a lot of friends who were very beautiful, and they seemed to have no trouble at all talking to
So
who
like
they
a
were interested in.
social,
Very sociable.
yeah.
They knew what to say, or they seemed like they always knew what to say. They
Right.
seemed like they always knew how to act, how to dress, how to be. And I was constantly, looking to them to see, how should I act and what should I do and how should I be? And I didn't have a strong sense of myself. So I was just constantly looking to other people because they seemed to have it, so much easier. It was like they are just so, sociable. And again, I know this is pretty normal for most teenagers and even in college that you look around to see and compare yourself to others, especially with women, it's very common. But I would say that I just felt almost like an alien or something.
Yeah.
It's very hard to describe, but the more people I talk to who are actually neurodivergent as well, they say the same thing. They just feel kind of like an alien.
Yeah.
And they're here on Earth and they're like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to
like I feel like I don't belong.
Right.
So I think what you're describing to me reminds me of what I've heard from people about they go to a party, for example, and they are the wallpaper.
Yes.
Or they blend in with the wallpaper because you don't want to interact fully because you don't know how to. You feel out of place. You don't feel like you relate to any of the people that are there.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, you don't want to be there.
Yes.
Right. And it takes you a lot of energy to actually say yes to these social gatherings.
Yes.
And when you go there, it's quite awkward, So I know that there may be somebody listening, and I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that this is what you're talking about.
Yes.
And that, they're not alone. Like this actually happens more than we know.
Yeah,
because clearly this is your job. So
if
it wasn't a lot of people, right? You wouldn't be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And nobody's going to sit there and want to admit that.
Right.
And so in terms of who I was attracted to, were always very outgoing, very loud, very boisterous, kind of
completely the opposite of
the opposite of me, so that I could just have them go first, or just they could talk for me, and
be in the shadow.
Yeah. And it was all because I had such an insecurity. And the funny thing is, when I fast forward to really finding myself and feeling more secure, I am actually a very outgoing and sociable person, even though I'm introverted. So you can also be both. So people who are listening, if you're like, well, I actually do like to socialize, or I do like to be around people, I like to connect. That can also be true, but you're just maybe struggling with how to do it or how to feel comfortable. Or maybe you feel comfortable with certain people and other people you feel very uncomfortable with. So there could be triggers, like a certain type of crowd where you feel extra insecure, and then other places you might feel really like you fit in. Maybe with other people who are just kind of different or feel different like you do. So
so that was like that during your high school years.
Yeah, high school years, it was very much anyone who was very outgoing, and in my case, I'm talking about men, but this applies to anybody, whoever you're attracted to. And I was always the outgoing guy, the one that would, and unfortunately, a lot of times they were insecure. And so our relationship was very unhealthy because the reason they were so outward focused was because they also didn't really have a strong sense of self. And so our relationship was pretty toxic and wasn't really meaningful and connecting to each other on a heart level, or it was more just for show, for the outward things that people might strive for, that are giving them that security without the internal work. So those were kind of the relationships I had, and very one-sided. So the other thing is like people pleasing and being codependent. So I was like that. where because I wanted so badly to say, oh, I have a relationship, this is my relationship, it was very much a source of my security to say I was in a relationship.
Right.
And so I would be outwardly focused on that, and he would be outwardly focused on whatever things that he wanted that were more not really in depth, like about a connection. So we were both doing the same thing, but it was more I wanted to please him, and my relationships all looked exactly the same like that, where I would be people pleasing and I'd pretty much do anything to, make him happy so that we could stay together. So I could say I have this normal life and I was a normal person and there was nothing wrong with me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting because I've heard that many times where, we attract the person that we really don't want actually.
Yeah.
And it feels like you wanted that, what you said earlier is that you wanted him to be the face of the relationship and speak for you. And I think we use the word should be in the shadows of him.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a conversation for another time because I would love to dig deeper into why we do those things, right?
Yeah.
Attachment styles and all that other stuff might come to mind right now. But yeah, so you're doing this in your high school years, and then did anything change at all when you go to like college?
So also because of my struggles with focus and different things to do with neurodivergence, it took me 7 years to finish university.
Okay.
And so I also didn't know what I wanted to do, and I kept changing my mind, and I was very insecure about what I wanted to do with my life. So I didn't have a normal path in terms of, graduate from high school, go to college, graduate, have a career.
Right.
I was all over the map. And so I had several different careers that were interesting to me. And I got into social services because I wanted to help people.
Right.
And that's where I met actually a couple of my long-term relationships that were very heavily dysfunctional. I met them while I was in social services, which I think is also pretty common because people tend to have those kind of careers because they want to fix themselves. And so I was drawn to those type of things. And then I would meet other people like that. And then we would, be in a relationship, and it would be, he wanted to fix himself, I wanted to fix myself, and we would come together, but it didn't happen that way because it was a very unconscious thing where we were trying to find something, and that's been really my journey, is finding myself. So in terms of career and relationships, it was the same thing. I was always looking for something that was missing in myself. And so I was all over the map with that. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, right. It absolutely does. It makes a lot of sense. I have a friend of mine that she always says, like, when I ask her, like, what do you do? And she goes, well, let me just by telling you that I am ADHD. Yeah. So I'm all over the map.
Yeah.
So I totally sort of understand this idea of not knowing.
Yeah.
And to a certain level, I am like that, where, I joke saying now I have too many tools in my toolbox and I don't know what to do with them because, I want to use them, but I can't reach the right people to use the tools with. But no, I totally understand that. So now take us on your journey. You talked about self-discovery. You always had this need to better yourself, to self-development, right? So at what point did you realize, hey, I am actually neurodivergent? Like, that's who I am.
That was fairly recent, but I had a lot more ahas before that, leading up to this, where everything came together, where all the puzzle pieces.
Take us back. Share with us all the ahas we want to know.
So each time I had one of these type of relationships, so I would describe as toxic and unhealthy. And this is not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming him. I'm not blaming myself. I'm not blaming my parents. That's just the patterns that we develop over time. And I had a pattern that it would be the same kind of relationship. So after a couple of those relationships, I was realizing, okay, who is the common denominator? It's me.
Right.
So I couldn't blame the guy anymore. I couldn't blame my partner anymore and say, well, how many messed up men are out there? You know, and I had to turn it around and say, this is me. I have a pattern now. And so what happened was I had to actually look and say, I don't want this pattern anymore. And I had to decide to get help, to get support, to figure out what is the pattern and what is going on and how can I change it.
Mhm.
And so
And by the way, kudos to you, because a lot of people are always pointing outward
yes,
and saying, I can't find the right guys. All the men that I'm finding are not good, blah, 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 blah. But you don't look at yourself to say, I am the common denominator in all these relationships. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah. And that's really the turning point, because I decided I didn't want to experience this anymore. And how can I take charge of it and change my life circumstances and change the way I'm going to live my life, and what type of life and what kind of relationship am I going to have? And that's when I really dug into the healing work that I do with my clients, which is, you know, looking at family patterns, looking at your past, looking at how you really feel about yourself under the surface. It's kind of like looking at your shadows, if you want to look at it that way. But a huge piece of what I do is you don't just look at yourself, because I find a lot of women especially will then use that to beat themselves up.
Interesting.
They'll say, oh, now I figured out all these things, and now I can say, I'm just so messed up. What's wrong with me? Why did I do that? And will spend years just berating themselves.
Right.
So we have to go past that. We have to go to, you know, the awareness piece on a deep level, and there's many layers. And then you have to turn that into acceptance and then go into action. So that's really my recipe for love, if you want to call it that, is to move through that process. And it's a continual process. And the more you're able to do it, each time you get to a deeper layer and you become more accepting of yourself. And then you feel more confident to get into action, and you start doing different things and you show up differently.
Right.
So that's what I started to do for myself to change things.
Oh, nice. In what kind of a time frame would you say you worked on yourself in?
I don't want to discourage anyone. This is a lifelong process, I would say. But when I really dug into it and I decided and got extremely focused, it was 1 year before I met my husband.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not. I take it as you were the researcher.
Mm-hmm.
You were the person who was trying all these, steps that you shared with us. So of course, it's going to look longer for you. Yeah. But lucky for your clients, you have taken all those lessons learned and packaged it into. They can actually go through it in a much, much, much shorter time than what you did. So that's what I love about like your program, my program, is that we have lived it.
Yes.
And so, it may have taken, 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
But hey, somebody had to go through it to come up with a good program.
Exactly,
So, our clients can now benefit from a shorter version of it.
Yeah, that's what I like to say. I'm here to save the time and the heartache.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
For other people. Yes.
Yeah, and that's why I love talking and collaborating and interviewing people that have a program that stemmed from their own personal struggles, because you've lived it. Yeah. And you have gone through it and you have tried it, and now it's a true program that you're sharing with the world. Absolutely. So I love that. Yeah. So before we get, because I'm excited to hear about I want to a little later, I want to dig deeper into if you not give you all your secrets to your program, but I want to give the listeners an idea of what you do, if client X was to present, right? But I want to talk about your love story. Yes. What are you able to share with us in terms of you say that after a year, then you met your husband?
Yeah, so I have to give a little bit of backstory quickly of what caused me to be so, what I call my enough is enough moment is before I met my husband, I actually reunited with my boyfriend, my very first boyfriend, who I had been with for 25 years before it.
Oh,
previously.
wow.
And I went into this whole fantasy of, oh, this is, we're star-crossed lovers and we come back together and this is going to be the fairy tale that I always wanted and everything's going to be amazing.
Like, oh, it was meant to be.
It was meant to be,
Yeah.
came back. And I would say it was probably the worst experience of my life. And it had to be because that's what was my catalyst. That's what changed everything. So we got together and it was like, in my head, I was like, we're going to get married and we're going to move in together, all these things. And it crashed and burned so badly that I was like completely just cut off at the knees. Like I was just devastated.
God. Yeah,
it was the worst experience of my life in terms of relationships. And so when you are basically on your hands and knees, that's when you say, like, that's it. I call it my enough is enough moment.
Yeah.
That's where I said, no, I am never, ever, 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 ever going to go through this again.
Yeah.
I'm done with this. I deserve love. I deserve a healthy relationship. I deserve to feel good, and be with someone who's going to respect me and see me for who I am.
Okay.
And it was just like that kind of conviction and strong energy is what I will say really got me there a year later, because without that, I think I might have just kind of limped along for many years, for I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
Maybe I never would have met my husband and just kind of kept going. So not that anyone listening has to go through a devastating heartbreak, but there has to be something where you say, I'm going to change this and I'm not going to continue this.
Right.
I'm not going to continue the way it's going. And I'm going to go after what I really want and what I deserve.
Okay.
So that's the energy that I went into this deep process of going into self-reflection and what can I do differently, go through my process, which I can explain in a minute. And then decide to date. So I went on the online dating world, match.com.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter what app it is, but that was the one I used. And I had support, and so I went on there and I was messaging with someone, and we had a funny exchange where we were just laughing about something, and I thought he's really funny, and so he asked me for coffee, and I was kind of hesitating because I was afraid that something like what had happened would happen again. I would get my heart broken. And so I was a little bit reserved, and I went back and forth. And honestly, the day we were supposed to meet, in my head, I had canceled about 10 times.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I need to just cancel. I'm going to tell him no. I'm going to say, no, I'm not available.
Yeah.
And I went back and forth. And the person I was working with, my mentor, who actually, this is why I say we always need help. She just said to me, it's just coffee. It's just coffee. It's 1 hour. It's not going to kill you. And so she basically convinced me, and I went, kicking and screaming the whole way there. I was fighting with myself. And then I remember just turning the corner and seeing him, and my heart just like lifted up.
Oh, wow.
It would just
At first glance?
First glance.
Wow.
Something just lifted in my heart, and I was like, oh, wow. And I just felt this really light feeling in my body. And he had waited for me outside the restaurant, which I thought, oh, that's sweet.
Very sweet, yeah.
And so I was all smiles and glowing already. And then I thought, wow, if I had canceled, I would have missed all of this. You would have missed
that opportunity to be a great guy. Yeah. It's respectful in that way.
And then 3 hours later, the place was closing, and we
closed the restaurant.
Yeah, we closed the restaurant. And we just never stopped talking, and we were basically joined at the hip from that point on. We just went on date after date, and we just never left each other's side. And now we're happily married. It's just like everything I wanted and more than I ever expected.
Wow. So wait, Was he the only person you went on a date with on Match?
The only person I had talked to one other guy that never resulted in a date, but it was 10 days after I joined this app.
And you met your husband. Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So that's how it can happen. That's
see, because you did all the work on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I joke about, I mean, it's the truth, I don't joke about it, but people always say, it's like the movie Jerry Maguire, you're complete.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it sounds good in a movie, but in reality, no, you should be complete yourself.
Yes.
So that two complete people coming together results in a beautiful love story.
Yes.
Because if you're looking to him, like you shared about your high school boyfriends, where you were looking for them to be the face of the relationship.
Yeah.
You were looking for them to, you even said, speak for you or something like that.
Yeah.
That is unhealthy.
No, that's a very unhealthy.
Yeah. So finding somebody that you can chat with for 3+ hours in a restaurant on a first date, and then just have it naturally, organically pick up and form a beautiful story. I think that's what doing the work on yourself really can lead you up to. Yeah.
I wanted to just say something also. The one thing I would stress is that women will also feel like they have to be perfect in some ways before they can have a relationship. So on the other side of that, I just want to point out that I went through this as well, where I was like, I have to, get to a certain level of, wellness within myself. I have to, be at a certain, it's almost like perfectionism, where you say, as soon as I
lose weight,
as
soon as
fix
I
myself,
change my hairstyle, or
and even internally healing. Sometimes we can get almost addicted to the personal development. I've been in the personal development field for over 15 years, and people can get very much addicted and say, I have to reach this certain level of awareness in myself, and like all of that can turn into a nightmare also, because it's really just the way that you're stopping yourself from moving forward, taking the action, taking the healthy risks, and opening your heart and showing up as you are, and doing that, like being vulnerable and showing up. So we create all these barriers, and we say, when this happens, I'll do this, or when I'm like this, I'll do that. So I just want to point out, you don't have to be perfect.
Nobody's perfect.
And you can be a work in progress. And my marriage has actually been amazing, because I've worked through so many things with his support within the marriage that I didn't have to be, a perfect person, and discovered so many things about myself so far as well, with just within the marriage. So you don't have to feel like I don't deserve, this kind of relationship until I'm at this level of healing or whatever it is.
Yeah. So I love that so much. I really do, because nobody's perfect. It's two imperfect people coming together and figuring out this life together. Exactly. But it's about finding, in my practice where I do matchmaking, I match people based on their values. So it's a very much values-based matching. So it's two imperfect people that have worked on themselves. They are 100% whole, that you're accepting yourself. I am not a perfect person. I don't have to wait to lose the weight. I don't have to wait to do the self-development. Now, if you have some healing though, that needs to happen, absolutely do that first. And then maybe you got out of a relationship where it was very traumatic. Maybe you just not in a mental position to really give to another person. Absolutely take time to take care of yourself. But I mean, what's 5 years, 10 years? Sometimes it can be too long. Like you said, the self-development is a big industry.
Yes.
That's why when you go to a bookstore and there's aisles and aisles of self-development, I'm contributing to that too, right? So
it's a lifelong process.
Yeah. So I get it. So I'm excited to chat now about what you do. So what does an ideal client that you deal with? I know we talked about what neurodivergent is and sort of what, and you even described how you were, because you are the perfect client, right, for what you do. But if somebody's listening right now and they're unsure, could this be me? Could, maybe I could be the ideal client, but what does that person look like for you?
Yeah, so I would say it's all in the way you approach things. So there's different types of women out there who are going to be ideal, but it's really comes down to the fundamental things. Like, for example, what I was saying, that I had enough that I was really ready to do what it takes to find a relationship and to figure out how I can show up differently or show up more as myself. So it's really the attitude is the first and foremost thing. It's like you feel ready, you feel like nothing is going to stop you from doing this, even though you might be busy, even though you might have a lot of work that you need to do. Something is always going to come up, but you know within yourself that it's the right time for you to do this process and to get the help you need. So that's the kind of the mental and the attitude part of it. And then I would say having an open heart and an open, even if you are a little bit, maybe you have some trust issues, maybe you've had some things in the past that have hurt you, but you're trusting enough to say, I'm going to get the help that I need from someone that I feel would be helpful. So someone who feels trustworthy. So if it's not me, it'd be somebody else. At least go to find someone who you know is going to support you through your process. So I would say just being open, willing, and ready. That's really all you need to show up with is this, and then having the desire. Like you have the desire and you know that you deserve this kind of love, this beautiful love relationship. You know that this is part of your, destiny or whatever you want to call it. And you just haven't figured out how to do it yet. So even if you have some doubts, you have some fear, you've got some things in the past that you need to work through, that's what I help you to work through. But if you just come to the table saying, I'm willing to, share these things with you, I'm willing to be open, I'm willing to look at myself and maybe do things that are uncomfortable, that are different, that may seem strange. I'm willing to do all those things because I have this desire. And I know that I am, deserving of this relationship.
No, I mean, that's so true. And a lot of people, I always say that everyone needs a coach. Even a coach needs a coach.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
You can YouTube things, you can, you have some pretty good content out there. You can listen to some of your YouTube videos and you can learn from that. But I think if you really want to make a difference, is to hire somebody who knows what they're doing. And they can walk you through, guide you through it. And it's nice to have that person who has this unbiased opinion about you. They're accepting you for who you are because they know that you have the drive, you have the desire to go from where you are to, attracting whatever that is that you want.
And we all have blind spots. So that's the other thing.
Absolutely.
This is why I have my own support system throughout my life. And we can't see what we can't see. That's one thing. We can get in our own way sometimes, even if we don't want to. Like when I was kicking and screaming, I most likely, if I didn't have the support at the time, would have canceled my date.
But
so
was it your coach?
My coach was like, it's just coffee. So you need someone to be the voice of reason to say, okay, I know you want to sabotage this, or there's something inside you that wants to run away, but it's going to be okay. And having that encouragement and the support makes a world of difference.
Yeah. I mean, you speak about blind spots. One of my signature programs is the blind spot blueprint.
There you go.
Like literally we get under and let's figure out some of those cues that we do, but we're not aware. They're in your blind spot. And they may be the reason why you are doing what you're doing. And they are blind spots too. Sometimes it's just knowing that I'm doing this and then being aware, when I do this, this is how people are reacting.
Exactly.
And it can help you not necessarily change. I mean, of course, change yourself if you choose to, but it can just being aware of something is I think is money.
Yeah,
for
that
sure.
is the healing in itself.
Yeah. So you talked about earlier about your process. Yeah. So my name is Kanu, and I'm coming to you as a client. And I am frustrated. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I've tried online dating. I've tried matchmaking. I've hired the most expensive, matchmaking service out there, and I still cannot attract love. What would I expect in your program?
Yeah. So the program is one-on-one with me. So it's a private and confidential experience with me. And we would start off with earlier I was talking about my recipe for love. So I give you a metaphor of what we would do. So the recipe for love would be, first thing we would look at is, for example, say you have a family tradition. We're going to use baking as a metaphor. You have a family tradition where everyone's birthday, you would bake a Black Forest cake, and everyone would get a Black Forest cake for their birthday, which is wonderful if you love Black Forest cake, but say you're allergic to chocolate or you hate Black Forest cake, then there's a big problem. This is really looking at the family patterns. So the first thing we're going to do is figure out, why are you still baking the Black Forest cake even though you've moved out, you're older now, you're carrying on the family traditions, even though it is making you ill. This is part of the metaphor. Why are these patterns still happening? What exactly is the pattern? And basically do the pattern breaking. That would be the first thing that we dive into. And we look at it from a compassionate point of view, because we're not here to blame anyone, blame ourselves, get into the shame spiral or anything like that. We just want to look at it and see, how can we break these patterns? And then the next part is what I call the recipe development. So now you need the new ingredients. You're making a new cake. You're going to bake a cake that you love, that has everything in it that you desire. So this is looking at your desires from a deep level, from a heart level, from, if anything is possible, because so many people think, I can't have that, or I'm going to have to compromise, or I'm going to lose myself if, I get in a relationship, and I can have the attraction, but I can't possibly have the reliability. Those two things don't go together. So we have a lot of barriers around what we think is possible. So this phase would be opening up the possibilities and looking at what are all of the ingredients of you, what are your desires that you truly want, and we really dig into that we have a lot of exercises around that. And then the last part is the action, which is actually baking the cake. So many women that I've talked to over the years, and myself included, we wish that we could just have the cake batter and then everything would be fine. We wouldn't actually have to bake the cake, which the metaphor is go on dates, talk to people, interact, communicate. So this is where I help you get into the action stage. So this is where I would help coach you through, how you could show up for a date and what kind of dates to look for, and what are some of the red flags for, what might be the same kind of relationship or the same kind of scenario that you can avoid, and just helping you through the whole action stage, because it's in the action that you find someone. We can't sit at home and wish a relationship into being. We have to. Prince
Charming is not going to show up at your door.
Exactly. So we have to actually get in there and bake the cake. So
yeah, no, I love that.
That's my overall process.
I love that. Very similar, right, to same process as although I love the cake metaphor. But
I love baking. That's why.
I see. I was switching the ingredients from flour to gluten, gluten-free sensitive. So I was following along as you were sharing. Yeah, I love that. So what have been some of the success stories that you have seen from a bud to a blooming flower?
Yeah. So one of my clients, she actually came to me when she was feeling very, this is not a typical thing, but she was actually in a marriage that she knew was ending. So she was very, it had been ending for years, and it was over, and she was very upset about it and just feeling very invisible, unseen, dismissed. And it had been years of not getting her needs met. And so she was very, and realizing this was her pattern. So again, taking responsibility and saying, this is where I've ended up. I need to change something. So we actually worked together through the whole, through her divorce process. And it was actually a year later. So we worked through, again, this is not a typical thing that I would work with someone from one marriage into another, but that's how it ended up. So she did the work, the process of really becoming strong within herself. What did she desire? Who did she want to be with? What kind of life did she want? And how could she really see herself as, her true authentic self? And when we got into that process, she had a couple of hiccups where she kind of got almost like me, where she got tangled up in somebody who was going to be, another similar thing. We actually worked through it, so she didn't have to go through the whole thing. She realized it. We cut it off, before it became anything big. And that's when she had her big realization, where she said, wow, I was doing the exact same thing, and I could have just got tangled up in this person again. But we got out of that, or I helped her out of that. And then she did the same thing. So she went on the dating app, and then she met someone, and they're married now, happily married. And she says it's just better than she could ever have imagined. And she feels so seen and held and supported. And she's like, I can't even imagine, like, this person, he's better than I ever imagined.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So,
I love that. I love that. Well, it's so great. Like, take a client, I know you say it's not your typical client, but to take him from like getting out of a marriage that was ending to like working with them to work on themselves, to like seeing them find love again and be happy.
Yes.
And everything in the middle there. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and I've had other clients who've done the same thing, but basically it started off where they were single. So but at that point where they were ready and really wanted to meet someone, and I've helped them to meet their person, their love of their life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So of course we want the listeners to like reach out to you, which I will put the information in the show notes for them to reach out to you. But I would like to hear from you, talk to the listener who may be like at that bottom pit of like, I can't take this anymore. This is it. I'm ready to like, but I don't know what to do. What would you, other than of course saying, sign up, talk to me.
Yes.
But what would be some words of encouragement that you would give them for them to, to be okay in the moment?
I actually have a message that became very clear in the last year, that this is something I would have really loved to hear when I was in my phase where I was just starting to really give up hope. That someone is going to love you for who you are, period.
Yes.
End of sentence. That is my message. I know this to be true. I have seen this time and time again. I've experienced it in my own life. I've seen my clients that have this, starting off with the idea like, but this is wrong with me and that's wrong with me. And it's different for me because I have this or I have that, or this is my problem. And I would say to that, again, someone is going to love you for who you are, period. That's what I want you to take away today, because that's where, you start moving forward with that inspiration, with that hope, knowing that you just haven't figured out how to show up as yourself yet, or, the process of doing things differently. You just need to be shown or supported or, figure that part out. But the truth is that there is someone out there who will love you no matter what is going on.
It's so funny. This morning I was scrolling through TikTok and I came across this TikTok that Steve Harvey, the comedian, did.
Yes.
And it was exactly that message.
Oh, nice.
And he was speaking to women.
Mm-hmm.
He said, ladies, there's a guy out there that would love you. I can't remember exactly what words he was using, but that's the message I got. Mm-hmm. That will love you, that will cherish you, that will, see you and hear you and like just love you.
Yes.
So, and this is now me editing stuff, but like, why are we wasting time in these relationships that are not serving us?
Yes.
And so, so that I love that so much because I know, that we struggle and we start to tell ourselves a story.
Yes.
I can't find anybody. And I heard the narrative of like in the Vancouver metro, including all the Tri-Cities and stuff, that which is where I am, British Columbia at the moment.
Yes.
That they are 4 women to every 1 guy.
Yes.
So there is such competition out there. There's an abundance of women, but not enough men. And so even though the message is somebody will love you for you and, whoever you are, there's still hope. So what would you say to that person who's like, well, but then the city doesn't have enough men?
Yeah. So that's where it doesn't matter about the circumstances, because when you are actually in your true essence, and when I would say like you're shining bright, you're being yourself, you're out there in the world, you're taking up space, you are just so magnetic that it doesn't matter. You're going to be seen.
Right.
I don't believe in just one, the one person for everyone. There's multiple different types of relationships you can have that are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But what I mean is like, you're going to be so magnetic and so visible and so bright for that person who's going to see your light. So it doesn't matter. This is where it goes all beyond circumstances. It goes beyond how many men are in the city, how terrible it is to date. You can probably go to every city around the world and someone's going to say, this city is the worst for dating.
Yeah.
I even asked that question on Facebook. I think I said, what's the worst city for dating? And everyone had a different city. Mm-hmm. So obviously it's going to be the perspective of, you could say that about anywhere, but it's not about where you live and the dating app or the medium or whatever you're doing. It's about how you're showing up and how you cut through the noise because you're just being yourself and you are showing up as you. And that's a special kind of, essence that shows up.
Yeah, I love that. Well, this has been so much fun chatting with you.
Yes.
But to close us off, can you tell the audience how they can connect with you, whether it's your social media handles or even your website? And yes, I will include it in the show notes, but how can they connect with you?
Yes, and thank you, Kanu. This has been such an amazing conversation. I love all of the things that you pulled out of the conversation so that the audience gets the best of what they need to hear. And all my handles are the same. So it's at lovemysticeleanor.com is my website. And then if you want to find me on Instagram, and you can always DM me or message me about what you thought about the show. If you had any questions or what really stood out for you, that would be amazing. I would love to talk to you. So it's at Love Mystic Eleanor is basically, you can find me on any social media handle. But if you want to ask me questions or connect directly, you can just go to Instagram and DM me.
Yeah, amazing. It's been such a great honor.
Thank you so much.
And great time to chat with you. I love quality time. I love the in-person interviews.
Yeah, this has been amazing.
Yeah, and hear your story and then share how you're helping people, find love like you did. So thank you for being you. Thank you for helping people. And
thank you.
May you continue to do that and create love stories and go to weddings with clients and all that stuff. So so thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for providing this platform for me.
Look at you, my friend. You made it all the way to the end. I'm so grateful. So the fact that you did make it all the way to the end, that means you liked this episode. So go ahead and be a hero. Send it to 3 people. And then go to iTunes where you can rate and review this podcast.